get into our first segment, and without further ado, let me introduce to you Maulana Sarfaraz Hamza, no stranger to the airwaves of Radio 786, who will be in conversation with Maulana Imran Nasser Hussain. Maulana Sarfaraz, assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran for having me.
Maulana, I'm going to hand over to you because you are going to be speaking to Maulana Imran Nasser Hussain. You are one of his students, I believe.
I would love to be one of his students, and I do take a lot of knowledge from him. But this is the first time we have an opportunity to actually meet in person. But I have been following a lot of his work, and I'm still very far away from being a student. You need to qualify to become a student. You need to qualify to become a student. So look, we take knowledge from wherever we are able to find knowledge, and alhamdulillah, Sheikh being with us is a great opportunity for us to take lots of knowledge. He's quite at an advanced age, and all that we can take from our scholars during this zaman that we are living in, this time that we are living in, is so important for us to reach out so that we can continue. Because when scholars like this leave us, we have to continue the work, we have to continue the study, we have to continue trying to do what has to be done. And it's just a privilege for me to be able to have this opportunity to have a discussion with Sheikh.
And so please do us the honor of introducing Sheikh.
On behalf of everybody at the radio station, Sheikh, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Maulana Sarfaraz.
Jazakallah for affording us the time, Sheikh. If I may very briefly just give the listeners a brief introduction. Sheikh Imran Nasser Hussain was born in the Caribbean islands in Trinidad in 1942. His parents hailed from India, and they migrated to Trinidad. He's a graduate of the Alimiya Institute in Karachi and a student of Dr. Fazlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah. As he also studied thereafter at the the Alimiya Institute is in Karachi, and then he studied at the University of Karachi, where he furthered his studies. After that, he also studied at the University of the West Indies, Al-Azhar University, and he is a graduate and at the Graduate Institute of International Relations in Switzerland. That's just a brief introduction to where Sheikh Imran Nasser Hussain studied. And as many people will know, listening to the airwaves of Radio 786, he's got so many books that are out there that are available for people to read and purchase, and also there are so many videos on YouTube, online, where you can you can listen and understand Sheikh. I'm overwhelmed with the opportunity that I have, and I'm speaking so much. I'd like Sheikh to speak to us. Sheikh, your visit to South Africa after some time. Tell us about your visit. What inspired your visit? What caused your visit to come here? And tell us what your program will be like, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, including the last of them all, the blessed Prophet Muhammad. Allah's blessings be upon him. I am always happy to come to South Africa because this was the land of the oppressed. And the oppressed in this land never bowed down and submitted to the oppressor. The oppressed in this land resisted the oppressor until eventually the oppressor had to pack his bags and leave. And therefore, this is a land where we find a model for the rest of mankind. Wherever there is oppression in the world, then the model of South Africa is the one to be adopted in responding to oppression. I came to South Africa while the oppressor was still ruling this country in 1987, and then never visited again for about 14 years, and came probably in 2001. And now I'm coming back after 10 years. And it's very nostalgic to come. I'm now 84 years of age by the moon. I have been traveling since February of last year. So in 1 month from now, it will be 1 year. And I still have the whole of this year to travel before I can go back home in the Caribbean island of Trinidad and take some sleep.
Alhamdulillah. Wow, that's amazing. You know, I can't travel. I'm only 42. I can't travel now for 1 month. Sheikh's been traveling at the age of 84. He's been traveling for an entire year, mashallah. And, you know, I think what there must be something that motivates and inspires you and drives you every day to say, I'm going to be away from home, but the cause is greater than my comfort.
It's the Quran that inspires me. I have studied in 5 different universities. I had great teachers. I have engaged with scholars around the world, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, Jews as well. And all through my life, what remains permanent is my recognition of the Quran as absolute truth. And to be able to teach the Quran is a great honor. And I was introduced into this mission by a very great teacher, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah, who came to South Africa in 1972-73, and he won the hearts of South Africa. Because I had him as my teacher, I was inspired to pursue this mission.
So, and not just to South Africa, but traveling all over the world. Your program, Sheikh, where have you come from, and where will you be going after this?
One of the nicest of all books to write that I could write is called a travelogue.
Okay.
I wrote one in 2003, a small one, and I wrote a bigger one in 2007. And many people enjoyed reading the travelogue as though they are traveling with me. But it takes time to write the travelogue, and I have so many other more important books to write. Otherwise, this would be a wonderful travelogue. I started in February. I had a heart attack in November of last year, the year before. Yeah, November. And in February, I got an invitation to attend a conference in Moscow. I'd never been to Moscow since 2013. And my doctors gave me permission to travel. And it was a big conference, a very important conference, about 350 delegates from 130 different countries. And I was the only Islamic scholar invited to the conference. This was a recognition by Russia of the importance of Islamic eschatology. And they gave me a very high profile in that conference. When the conference was over, I was surprised when I was invited to join a small group of people, about 15 of us, to have dinner with the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. He is the most famous foreign minister in the whole world today. And the minister spent about 2 hours with us over dinner, and all the talk was on politics and economics. And since I am a student of international relations, I was thrilled with the discussion. But then I interrupted to say to him, can we talk about the Quran and Russia? And then silence fell on the room. Nobody talked. And the minister was surprised to learn that there was so much in the Quran that was relevant to Russia. So he asked me whether I could write. I could write on the subject for him. I then proceeded for the next 4 or 5 months to write a book entitled The Quran and Russia's Destiny. And and that book is now being printed in Malaysia. But someone here in Cape Town has already translated the book to Afrikaans.
Okay.
If we can get a publisher, then we can publish the book. Or if we can get a printer, we print the book here in Cape Town. I'm here for the whole month of January. And I go to Durban for the month of February. And then I go to Lodium for the whole of Ramadan. And then I go to Botswana, to Malawi, to Zambia, to Gambia, and to Senegal. Maybe a few days each before I return to Johannesburg to go to Mauritius and then back to Malaysia. When I go to Malaysia in May, we have a launch of the book,
Okay.
The Quran and Russia's Destiny. And then when I go back to Russia in July, I hope we launch the book in Russian
Okay.
in Moscow. This is information that people love to read about. It's a travelogue, and I just don't have the time to write a travelogue. I'm writing a new book now after the Quran and Russia's Destiny on the footprints of Dajjal in time. And while I'm here in Cape Town this January, I do hope you'll come to attend the lectures because I want to teach this important subject, the sacred system of time in Islam.
Okay.
Every Hindu, every Christian, every Buddhist, and every Jew in Cape Town would be very interested to learning on the subject of sacred time because it has now disappeared. I also want to spend some time during this month in teaching the subject of the Quran and Russia's destiny.
Okay.
And also because you have to excuse my language, I refer to those who attacked the Syrian government and chained the government. I call them Israel's puppy dogs. But they say they are Muslims who want to establish the caliphate or the Khilafah state. And I need to spend some time to teach a subject that is hardly ever taught. What is the model, what is the explanation of a Khilafah state or a caliphate, and the conception of an international order that comes from the Khilafah state. If Russian President Vladimir Putin understands this subject, his views might change on the subject of the caliphate. This is what I'm going to be doing in Cape Town, and I hope and pray that Allah might bless my efforts here. This might be the last time that I can visit this city. We ship my books. It's the first time you're getting my books in South Africa in 10 years. But this time we have the entire collection of 32 books, including my teacher's book. And I'm going to reserve maybe about 50 sets. I know you already want one. These 50 sets I will personally autograph.
Okay. Sheikh,
Yeah.
I want to touch on those topics again after the break, but we do need to break for an ad break, and then when we return, inshallah, we will go in a little bit more depth, inshallah.
It is Community Pulse on Radio 786 100.4 FM. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Khadija Ajam and very privileged this morning to be joined in studio by Maulana Imran Nasser Hussain, who is in conversation with Maulana Sarfaraz Hamza. We've swapped things around slightly, and because of Maulana Imran Nasser Hussain, you've heard earlier on as Maulana Sarfaraz sort of outlined little bits and pieces. It was literally just little bits and pieces of his bio, and due to his time, we are hosting him in our Family Hub segment, which is swapped around today in our first hour. Maulana Sarfaraz, please do continue.
Okay, Jazakallah for that. Sheikh, we're back from our ad breaks, and now we have a few more moments to learn something, Sheikh. Sheikh, please tell us the importance of, in your work, in your books, whether it's regarding Russia, and there are other many books, as you've said, people can reach out to try and get those books as well. And I believe there's a website as well where they can go and purchase the books on the website as well. How does the Quran as a source inspire your discussion on these topics?
Well, first of all, let me remind our audiences that we've shipped all my books to South Africa, so they're all available wherever I'm lecturing.
Okay.
Wherever I'm lecturing. If you buy books where I'm lecturing, I autograph them for you. Otherwise, I will autograph only the complete sets of books. Then, it is because of Maulana Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah, that I was able to enter the classroom of international relations at the University of the West Indies with a class filled with only diplomats. And when they learned that I'm a graduate from a Pakistani university, they all looked down upon me. And when they heard that I'm a graduate of religious studies, it made it worse. What are you doing here? We're diplomats. But the advantage that I had was that I entered the classroom with the Quran. And for me, the Quran and the knowledge of the Quran was not a box which was sealed and simply transferred mechanically so from one generation to another. Not at all. The Quran was sent to people who think. And my teacher fostered this. He encouraged us to think. That is what allowed me to turn to the Quran, to locate in the Quran. What does the Quran speak on political reality? What does it speak on economic reality? What does it say about monetary reality? And so on. But in addition to the independent thinking, my teacher also gave me the methodology for study of the Quran. And one of the subjects I want to teach while I'm here in Cape Town is that you cannot, let me repeat it one more time, you cannot study the Quran unless and until you are reciting the Quran. And Allah did not send down the Quran in Hindi or in Urdu or in Afrikaans. Allah sent down the Quran in the Arabic language. So you have to learn sufficient Arabic to be able to recite the Quran. And you have to recite the Quran every day. Every day. The best time to recite the Quran is at the time of Fajr. And you have to khatam the Quran, meaning to complete the recitation of the whole Quran once a month. And a month with Allah is from one moon to the next, a lunar month. So if you are reciting the Quran this way, the way Allah recited it to Nabi Muhammad, Allah's blessing be upon him, then you qualify to study the Quran. And my teacher gave us the methodology how to study the Quran. So when I sat down in a classroom of international politics, international economics, international law, etc., for a degree in international relations, I was like a fish in water, because the Quran was explaining to me what others could not understand. All through the year, I was the most brilliant student in the class. And at the end of the year, I came first in the exams. This is what the Quran does for you. If you abandon that nonsense, that the knowledge of the Quran is a sealed package, and all that you have to do is to transfer it mechanically so from one generation to the other, which unfortunately, I have to say it, I cannot escape, this is the methodology of your Darul Uloom. That's why your Darul Uloom is not producing the scholars who can do what I did in that classroom and come first in the exams with a classroom filled with diplomats. I then went to Geneva, to the Graduate Institute of International Studies in Geneva, and chose a PhD topic which was built on Islamic eschatology, post-Caliphate Islam, and the search for a new Islamic public order. This was Islamic eschatology. But I didn't even know the term Islamic eschatology. There were no scholars of Islamic eschatology anywhere in the world. And so I'm grateful that that thesis was not published. And I had to spend the next 27 years of my life, by Allah's kindness and grace, pioneering the branch of Islamic eschatology. I asked Russia's most famous political philosopher, Alexander Dugin.
Yes.
I asked him to write a foreword to the book, The Quran and Russia's Destiny. And he wrote a beautiful foreword. And in the first paragraph he says, "We recognize you, Imran, as the world's authority in Islamic eschatology. This is how Russia has recognized my scholarship." And so it is the Quran which makes the difference.
Sheikh, I've been listening to your talks and reading certain things that you've written, and for me, as just a layperson in Cape Town, I found it so important that our listeners of the radio station and the public in Cape Town take the opportunity to come to the talks wherever they are and to attend them, to listen to what needs to be taught, because we are living in a time where so many of the Quranic predictions and explanations towards eschatology, we are living through those times, and for us to be oblivious of the signs happening around us is an indictment on our Muslim community, because, as you've rightfully said, all this information is in the Quran. All the knowledge that you've gotten over time is in the Quran, but our lack of ability to be able to identify them and reconcile between what is happening around us and what the Quran is speaking about has caused us to sort of just, steer away from the topic. I would consider you as the leading scholar in not just Islamic eschatology, but in world eschatology. And I say that because, in my opinion, Islamic eschatology is probably the most in-depth study of eschatology in many of the religions or ideologies. And having that information from an Islamic point of view would make you a leading scholar in all of it. So how do you feel that the Quran and eschatology and the practical way in which we can look at this to guide our lives today?
Well, first of all, you are correct that Islamic eschatology is the most advanced, the most comprehensive, the most accurate branch of eschatology in the world today. But we don't want to broadcast that. We want to show respect for Christian eschatology. I never myself engage in interpreting the Christian scriptures. I said that's the job for the Christian eschatologist, and I want to learn from him. Similarly with Jewish eschatology and Hindu and Buddhist eschatology. We don't want to offend others.
Yes, correct.
But you are correct that Islamic eschatology is indeed the most advanced and the most comprehensive eschatology in the world today. And eschatology is terribly important, for example, in the world of money. I don't know whether it has yet come to South Africa, but it is sweeping Malaysia. And all the Malaysians, again I have to excuse my language, like sheep and cattle, are now welcoming the cashless world. The cashless world represents progress, represents advancement, when in fact the cashless world is just one more step towards slavery. There is a state called the State of Israel, and South Africa knows that state very well because South Africa can recognize the oppressor. South Africa can recognize the oppressor. And Israel is today surpassing the United States as the world's greatest oppressor. Israel can do things that even the United States cannot do. Israel doesn't care two peanuts for world opinion. And Israel, in order to become the ruling state in the world, must control the world of money. Islamic eschatology tells us this. And on the road to the world of money, control over the world of money, is the movement from real money, which is money with intrinsic value. I taught this subject in South Africa 20-something years ago, and they laughed at me, and they scorned me, and they ridiculed me, and they ostracized me here in this country 20-something years ago. But now the tables have turned, and this caravan is moving forward, and they are now in retreat, because I was correct that money in the Quran is money with intrinsic value, dinar and dirham, and they made that prohibited. You're not allowed to use that. And they gave us paper money instead, which they invented. And they used that paper money to enrich themselves at our expense, right here in South Africa, in your gold mines. That's what they did. And then they moved from paper money to the petrodollar, and then they moved to cryptocurrency and digital money, the cashless world. And the cashless world is one more nail in the oven, in the coffin, taking us to a world of slavery, where unless you submit to Israel the way a slave submits to a slave master, Israel will do with you what Israel has just done to Syria. So Islamic eschatology tells us the way to resist is to try to return to real money and to stay away or withdraw from their monetary system. I don't know what's happening in South Africa. I don't know whether you're moving towards the cashless world as yet or not.
Yes, we are.
You are? So you're moving back to slavery.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because that's, you'll go to many places and they will tell you we don't take money, we don't take cards, even the plastic money is now a thing of the past. They'll tell you you just tap with your phone, or or people will take cryptocurrencies and so on and so forth.
Maulana Sarfaraz, please do excuse me, Maulana. Some of our listeners are asking if Maulana can perhaps just give a brief definition of eschatology in the way in which you use it.
Eschatology is a study of the end time, or the end of history. And we say in Islam that the most important event now waiting to occur in history is the return of the Messiah. And the Messiah is the son of a virgin woman called Maryam, and his name was Jesus, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. He came, he left, and he will return. And this return of Jesus, of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, is firmly grounded in the Quran. There is abundant evidence in the Quran supporting the return of Jesus. And when he comes, he will be able to kill the false Messiah, who is now impersonating him. But the false Messiah, what the Christians call the Antichrist, the Quran refers to him in an ayah mutashabiha, meaning a verse which has to be interpreted. So no boxing gloves over an interpretation. When you interpret the Quran, you can be right, you can be wrong. Only Allah can confirm it is correct. But if your interpretation of the Quran is correct, it becomes the truth, and it will survive. And if you make a mistake, then you still get blessings for making the effort. But tomorrow it will go down the river of no return. So the Quran says in Surah Al-Mursalat, prepare yourself, prepare now for a shadow. Intaliku ila zidlin, prepare for a shadow. Zi thalasi sha'ab, which will comprise of 3 parts. And I have interpreted that shadow. You can interpret it differently, but you cannot say I am wrong. Only a schoolboy will do that, because no one can confirm an interpretation to be correct unless Allah confirms it. So they can continue to shout, it makes no difference. Prepare for a shadow which will comprise of 3 parts, and I've interpreted the shadow to be the false Messiah, Dajjal, the Antichrist, and he will come in 3 parts. And I have said, insofar as politics is concerned, in the first part of that shadow we saw the emergence of Pax Britannica, and in the second part of the shadow, Pax Americana, and in the last part, Pax Judaica. And the Pax Judaica will have its fulfillment when someone will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am the Messiah, when Israel, it becomes the ruling state in the world. That is the Antichrist. So when Nabi Isa alayhi salam returns, he will kill him. And then this bogus state of Israel, let me repeat it for those who are supporters of Israel in South Africa. The bogus state of Israel will then be destroyed. And the true holy state of Israel will then be established in Jerusalem, and the true Messiah will rule the world from Jerusalem.
I love that interpretation. Why I love that interpretation? Because it opens your mind to go back to Surah Mursalat and to go and look at that ayah and to think about it and to see how the Quran and Sheikh always says that, it's a pity that we are limited with time, and we've come to the end of our time, but we have Sheikh with us for the entire month of January, and I want to encourage all the listeners to please attend the talks, buy the books, do the research, go online, go and see, because this is about your life. It's not something about the future. It's happening right now. Your children, your grandchildren are going to be affected by this. So please go and listen to the talks. And inshallah, Sheikh will be joining us on radio in the weeks to come as well, where we will continue a more in-depth discussion about eschatology, about his opinion on the Quran and his interpretation of the Quran. Like he said, everybody's open to interpretation. And inshallah, we will learn more about the Sheikh while he is with us. Thank you so much to the radio station for having hosted us, Sheikh. In ending,
I do hope that the radio station will give the announcements of my lecture so people get to know.
We will get all of those
that,
details. All of those details we will continue announcing it. Shukran so much for joining us, Maulana Imran Nasir Hussain. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.